Welcome to the Health Angle podcast. I am Dr. Mike Headlee, and with me is Dr. Gordon Fimreite.
Hey, it's great to be
Dr.
here
Gordy.
again. Oh, I cut you off.
No, that's
Just
okay.
start the podcast. I'm cutting you off. Hey, good to be here, Mike. And I'm excited about this subject because 60% of the population in the United States have some form of sleep dysfunction. That's a big percentage. And I think a lot of people think 60% is what I read.
Wow.
Yeah, huge. And I think that's a big number because a lot of people think that the only solution is go to bed early. But in fact, there are so many things that you can do externally and internally. Externally meaning the environment you sleep in, internally mean what you can do. And I think it's a great subject because you can sleep the same amount, but your quality can be better by just making some modifications, what you do with those two environments. So great subject. I'm excited about this topic.
I am too. We're going to have a lot of takeaways. So our listeners, if you're listening and driving or on the podcast, don't take notes or whatever. Just get home, watch the YouTube video and take some notes. There's going to be some really good gems in here. And before we just dive into the top 10 list of things to do or whatever action steps, I want to talk about the philosophy of sleep. But right before that, I want to talk about why I think sleep is more important than diet and exercise. In our last podcast, we talked about exercise. Sleep, that's a bold statement. Sleep is more important than diet and exercise. All these New Year's resolutions and people exercising, going to the gyms and doing weight loss and taking supplements. If you don't eat for a week, it's called a week-long fast. And that's actually really good for you. And we'll tie into that with breaking a fast and breakfast next time. But you can go a week without exercising, laying on the beach in Mexico or in Florida or something like that, and you aren't going to just crumble and fall apart. It's probably not the best. You can still exercise on vacation, but you can't go 1 week, Dr. Gordy, with zero sleep. Your body will shut down. You'll get delusional. Your immune system will start to shut down. You'll literally get sick with zero sleep in a week. Zero food in a week with water. I mean, that's genius to help, but you can't go a week without sleep.
No doubt. I went onto this site. It's the National Sleep Foundation. And, a lot of times when you think of, if you're lacking on sleep, you think of kind of the normal stuff. I'm kind of lethargic. I'm low energy. I don't feel like doing much. I'm kind of forgetful. I got kind of memory fog. But they shared some stats that I thought were interesting. People with difficulty falling or staying asleep just 2 nights a week have higher levels of depression and than those that don't. And then over 90% of Americans who engage in high levels of healthy sleep behaviors have no significant levels of depression symptoms. And now this group called the National Sleep Foundation, they have started programs for our adolescents because now it's starting to show up in the adolescent age, which is profound. So, yeah.
So if we optimize your sleep, that can really, really combat anxiety, depression, issues. We talked last time about how important exercise was to help with depression and mood and health. So if you can really dial into your exercise, get a good routine there. We'll teach you how to get a good sleep routine here that has profound mental health benefits as well.
Yeah.
Really
and
exciting.
There's a couple other stats on that site that I want to share as well, if you don't mind, Dr. Mike.
Go ahead.
It suppresses the immune system. High blood pressure. I mean, these are big factors in today's world. Depression, anxiety. I mean, how many, you can always tell the most popular conditions based on the drugs out there for the conditions. And sure enough, high blood pressure is a big one, depression, anxiety. But it also can lead to diabetes, depression, obesity, cardiovascular disease. And then as it continues, it can lead to dementia and Alzheimer's, in part to everything else, a bad lifestyle, lack of exercise, etc. But sleep is a major part of that.
In sleep, I contend in my practice, when I'm working with a client, when they say their sleep is improved or they're sleeping well, they can virtually heal from anything.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they're in a bad place, if you're sleeping well, you can virtually heal. That's when our body does heal and repair and detox. And let's real quick, I wanted to touch on the philosophy of sleep. This is a kind of like the philosophy of chiropractic. This is we can give you sleep hygiene. We can give you try 10 things to help you sleep. Do you take magnesium? Do you take CBD? Do you do lavender oil? Do you use an eye mat? I mean, there's just so many hacks to help. And I'll give you some of my favorite things that I do to optimize my sleep, Dr. Gordy. But
Yeah.
I believe the philosophy of sleep is an effect. Insomnia is an effect, not a cause, because it's a strong drive, just like eating and sex and other drives. And we're healthy and well, we're eating well, we're moving well, we're thinking well. Sleep is just a natural effect of a healthy lifestyle. And so I want to really, really emphasize that. So we're going to give some tips and really give things that you can improve your sleep. But I believe we can't just only focus on sleep. That's why we talk about a broad context of different topics each week. And so I believe that's why we're going to help people in all aspects on the Health Angle podcast. We're going to hit every angle of health as we go along, and we're just going to give people actionable steps that they can do to improve their overall health. So there's the average sleep cycle, Dr. Gordy, is roughly 90 minutes. I get it that someone is 89 and 95, but the average sleep cycle is 90 minutes. And I want people to realize that. And so if you get 4 good sleep cycles, it's about 6 hours. 5 good sleep cycles, 7.5 hours, obviously. And so how much sleep do we need? Let's start with that. Well, what if we just said you're in bed 8 hours? Well, that gives you a little leeway to fall asleep. That gives you, if you need to get up and use the bathroom, restroom, or wake up, or just kind of wake up and kind of roll out of bed, stretch on the floor, whatever. But that gives us a half-hour leeway. So 7.5 hours, is 5 good sleep cycles. That if it's quality, like you touched earlier, that's a really, really healthy, good amount of sleep for the average person, babies and developing kids, high school athletes, professional athletes, maybe they need 8, 9, 10 hours. And, but I want people to understand. So, if you calculate your sleep, you say, well, I have to get up at 5 a.m. every day for work, or 6 a.m. or whatever. You can just subtract that 7.5 hours, and say, well, I better get to bed at 9:30 then, if I want to get, or you just, then you really, so, does that make sense to you
Yeah,
to
no,
really calculate how
I love it.
much sleep? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's brilliant. And I think there's other aspects we'll touch on, but it's interesting. I was looking at a document from the Sleep Foundation organization, and they're talking about the phases of sleep. And, in the long term of things, maybe the information not as important as implementing things that will help you sleep. But I thought it was interesting just to see what happens. The first stage is light sleep. That's when your brain slows down, your breathing is regular still. And then you go into the second stage, which is also a light sleep. And this is when your heart rate and your body temperature start to decrease. And then phase 3 is the deep sleep. This is when your waking is difficult. When you're trying to wake up a spouse or a child, they're in their deep sleep. They're hard to wake up. And when they do wake up, they're foggy. They have impaired cognitive performances. And their body physically repairs itself in this phase. They're boosting their immune system, restoring the bones and the muscles, tissues. And so it's a really important sleep phase. And then stage 4 is the REM. This is the rapid eye movement. And this is where dreams happen. This is where people can really get vivid images in the dreams. They wake up and it really seems real. This is the rapid eye movement. And emotions are processed here. If you had a rough day during the day, this is where emotions basically get resolved. And your brain activity in this stage looks similar to how it looks when you're awake. So you lose your muscle tone except for your eyes, which are rapidly eye movement. That's why it's REM. And the breathing starts to rise. And during this stage, really important, new learning and motor skills are processed during this phase, which is important. But you said we go through cycles, Dr. Mike, and it's interesting because on average, the average person only has about 2 hours of REM sleep per night. And of course, obviously, infants have even more than that. And then there's learning and memory. It goes through those. The old studies used to say it was during the REM that they used to have learning and memory, but now it's actually during the non-REM phases. So kind of fascinating. It's kind of interesting, that information, but I think what's more interesting is what we can do to get a further night's rest. And there's a circadian rhythm that happens. It's a 24 cycle. It's basically your body's clock. It's the internal clock. And it's based on daylight hours and nighttime hours. And in the morning, when your body is starting to wake up, you release a hormone called cortisol that helps you to wake up and get you ready for the day. In the evening, when you're starting to kind of tailor off and go to sleep, you start to release a hormone called melatonin, and that helps you kind of make you kind of slow down, get you prepped for sleep so you can get into these deep cycles and help you. Obviously, if there's stress, that kind of mixes up and disrupts your circadian rhythm. Same thing if someone travels a lot and they go over different time zones, or if they're sleeping on different beds, or there's too much light, and all these different dynamics that play a role on that circadian rhythm. I was looking at the different things that you can improve with sleep, and I finally just kind of broke it down in my head into your environment, your external environment, things that you can create in your own bedroom or hotel room or wherever you sleep. And there's also internal things that you can do within you that you can do to also maximize your quality. Maybe not quantity, maybe it's not possible, but your quality of sleep each night.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll dive into those and give some really good pointers. And thank you for going through the 4 stages of sleep in that 90-minute sleep cycle. You know, you go through those 4 stages, and roughly based on, I have the book as a reference, The Sleep Solution, Why We Sleep by
Brilliant.
Matthew Walker, The Sleep Solution, Chris Winter, MD, and then Michael Bruce. He calls himself the American Sleep Doctor, The Power of When, talks about the circadian rhythms of everything, not just sleeping, how to eat and, you know, take vitamins and things like that. So roughly half our sleep, if we do the 8-hour example, if we're in bed 8 hours and sleep 7.5 hours, for instance, and get 5 sleep cycles, go through stage 1 through 4, roughly half of that should be light sleep. Ideally, roughly 25% should be REM sleep, and then roughly 25% should be deep sleep. You know, that means like 2 hours of deep sleep. I have clients that get 8 minutes and 10 minutes and 15 minutes. And before we dive in, just real quick, there's so many good ways to measure your sleep. If you don't have an Aura ring, a Garmin watch, a Fitbit, an Apple watch, you could maybe borrow one for a week or two from someone just to get some data. It's really, really fun to get data and measure. I mean, it's simple though. If I say I'm going to bed at 10 and I'm going to get up at 5 in the morning, I can just assess how I'm doing. If I'm wide awake or tired, did I get physically out of bed or what? But I really like the data, because then if we give Gordy internal or external health tips or hacks that we personally use and do, and people try these, then they can go, wow, that improved my REM sleep by 30 minutes. That improved my deep sleep by 18 minutes, you know, and I didn't wake up once or whatever. So I like to have some data if you can. And I'm curious, I've had an Aura ring for a long time. It's basically like a sleep study every night and tracks my heart rate variability and steps. I'm curious, do you use anything to track sleep, or have you in the past?
You know, Mike, I have not. And the reason I haven't is because I actually sleep pretty good. And by the way, the books that you've read on sleep, I'm impressed. I think I'll take a sleep right now and let you just take over the show.
No.
But anyway, some of the things that I've done, like internally, I don't usually use gadgets, and I'm impressed that you using that technology. You can share more. and maybe I can even learn some information on those techniques and how they work. What do you find most effective, and how do you use them?
Well, one of my favorites is an Aura Ring, OURA, because it doesn't have a green light and Bluetooth sensor on, 24/7. It's collecting data live, but then it only kicks in with the Bluetooth when you turn on your app on the phone. I've never been a big fan of Apple Watches and all the continuous EMF just tied to my body personally. I'm not against it. I mean, some of those Garmin watches are really low level stuff, but I don't feel relaxed when I have devices hooked to me. But
Hmm.
I haven't had any issues with the Aura Ring. And like I said, it tells you exactly how many minutes of light sleep and REM sleep and deep sleep and heart rate variability. They talk about, I mean, our most people can't fall asleep unless their pulse is 60 or less. I mean, just
Wow.
think about getting off the treadmill, it's like, great, now
Yeah.
fall asleep. Well, you can't.
So,
It's
Dr. Mike, I think our viewers would like to know, how does the ring work? Are you hooked up to it? How does it exactly work?
Well, just like a regular ring, just like a regular ring. It holds a charge for a week, and you can go in
And
the
you put
hot
it
tub
on your
and
finger.
shower. Yeah, hot
You
tub,
put it on your
shower.
finger.
Yeah, hot
Okay.
tub, shower, anywhere. If you're lifting weights and grabbing barbells, you maybe not want to wear it because it's a metal ring, and it has three sensors in it, and it's very durable.
Wow.
And it measures
Brilliant.
how many steps you're doing, and it measures your temperature, your respiration, heart rate variability, which measures your stress, which is a huge involvement. So, but
Wow.
Garmin watches too are genius stuff. I'm not, I know a lot of people that have Apple watches, and they track sleep very accurately, and Fitbits. So you don't need those, but if you really want to improve your sleep, and use metrics, there's some really good stuff out there.
That's brilliant. Love it, Mike, Dr. Mike. Yeah. Like, how about like the external environment? Do you want to go there and just discuss
Yeah.
things that we can do?
Yeah, I have a ebook I wrote, 10 things you can do today to improve your sleep. And on our YouTube channel, the Health Angle Podcast, if you just want to leave a comment, I can send this to you as an ebook, 10 things you can do today to improve your sleep. So let's talk about external, basically sleep hygiene, they call it, room temperature, the layout of the room. Is it cluttered? Is it blackout shades, etc., like that? So the whole philosophy of sleep as well, like I said, is in effect. I think the evening sleep is a big part of our morning routine. How do we get up? Do we hit the alarm, 10 times? Do we get up and what's our morning routine? We're always right. We get up, hit the alarm. We're just rushing out the door. We just, grab a donut someplace, and we're just, oh shoot, I just made it to work on time, and oh, now I'm behind. I didn't prep my work, and where's my paper and my phone? Like, I think it starts in the morning. Because if we wake
That's
up
brilliant.
intentional and not hit the snooze, and we get up relaxed, there's so many alarm clocks that wake up with light and or soft music instead of like a fire alarm. So our nervous system, the cortisol goes really, really high. And we get up and hydrate right away. We stretch out, do some breathing exercises, whether we do yoga, we do a little reading, a little meditation, exercise, work on ourselves, eat a good breakfast, or if we're fasting, we'll talk about that next week. That's a really good way to keep our nervous system and our body balanced to start the day. Because if we started off bad with blood sugar and high blood pressure and stress and anxiety, our day might just skyrocket, just go
Mhm.
downhill from there. So I think it starts with the morning. And then what's our next routine is midday, and how we hydrate throughout the day and how we nourish our body during the day and lunch. And if we didn't sleep so good and you can get a power nap in, I think that's genius. In my experience and my knowledge, all the sleep books that I've read, is if we can get 20 to 30-minute nap at lunch, you won't get into deep sleep in that amount of time. So it's not going to make you not want to fall asleep at night, but it will just refresh your body. I'm a huge fan of meditation, whether it's a Calm app, 5 minute, 2 minute, 20-minute meditation to really, really recharge. You want to work out at lunch, totally okay. But I think you have to have a solid, healthy, intentional morning routine and a noon routine, and then the evening routine we'll talk about as our external environment. Do you want to, really, I'm a big fan is only doing two things in the bedroom: sleep and sex. I mean, we shouldn't be, unless it's a studio apartment, I
Thanks
mean,
for sharing, Mike.
yeah,
That's too private.
yeah.
This is a PG show, okay?
PG. So why? Because then we got to, we don't want to, we want to focus on a sleep sanctuary. I'm a big fan of dark, block out shades. That's why it has to be uncluttered in your bedroom in case you have to get up in the middle of the night for whatever reason. You don't want to be tripping on things and running into stuff. You want it decluttered. Declutters the mind, not big stacks of unused books that you aren't going to read and bills you that are already paid and paper, dirty clothes, whatever. Have a very clean room, very dark. You can even wear blackout eye masks too, in case you want to travel on a plane or sleep somewhere else where it's not so dark. At least you can mimic your sleep environment. I'm
Mhm.
a big fan of fragrance. My favorite is lavender oil. I spritz that on the pillow and I put some lavender on my feet. And I'm a big fan of lavender oil. You need to have sheets should be really comfortable. Some people like satin sheets, so you don't have to get as many wrinkles, but they should be really comfy. Your pillow, we aren't going to talk about chiropractic and your body mechanics and your spine and your curves just today, but you need to have a really, really good pillow. I think the most important item in your house, most expensive, should be your bed, not your
Yeah, I
smart
couldn't agree
TV.
more.
If you have, I'm not against expensive couches and expensive treadmills and all that kind of stuff, but you should have a really good quality bed. It doesn't have to be expensive, it just has to be good.
Yeah.
And
I
so,
want to touch on that, Mike,
okay,
Dr. Mike, real
go
quick
ahead.
about the mattress. We get questions about both mattresses and your pillow. And sometimes these two items can be very subjective. In other words, it's the eye of the beholder. And it's hard. I used to sell pillows in my office and I stopped pretty quickly because one spine seemingly perfect for this pillow didn't really fit with this other person because it just wasn't a comfort level. Um, so as far as pillows, I personally love like a down pillow. That way, if you're sleeping on your back, it gives enough where it supports the cervical spine. But if you're on your side, you can clump it up. So at least your spine is straight up and down, actually sideways. It's going to be straight instead of your head tilted too much. And as far as the mattress, I'm always a big fan of the firmer mattresses. That way it supports your spine. But there's give. There's either an inch or 2 inches of memory foam or a mattress topper, just enough to give for those, the hip and the shoulder. But the other thing that's really important, I think, you talked just briefly about the electromagnetic waves that pass through us. If you're sleeping in a mattress that has wires like the coils that are made out of kind of the wire metal material, that's almost like a mosh pit for electromagnetic waves. And if you're sleeping 1/3 of your life and you're on kind of this, this antenna, so to speak, for electromagnetic waves, that in itself is not a healthy condition at all. And that absolutely can contribute to a poor night's sleep. A big fan of like a Sleep Number air mattress type. There's other air mattress types of mattresses out there, in addition to like kind of like the memory foam. I don't give specifics, but in general, the firmer the better. But just a little memory topper, just to give, so to speak. Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I give too. I mean, I don't endorse purple mattresses, or Tempur-Pedic or whatever, but yeah, that makes total sense. So, with only about 8 or 9 minutes to go, Gordy, I use a number 10, 3, 2, 1, 0. What does that stand for? 10 is the hours you should have your last cup of coffee before bed. So that's your caffeine curfew. So if you go to bed at 10, you can't have coffee over past noon. Ideally, because even if you have a cup of coffee at 9 at night and go to bed at 10 and sleep, you say you sleep good, it's still a nervous system stimulant. 3 is the amount of hours you should stop eating before bed. So you should have your last meal at 7 if
Love
you
it.
go to bed at 10. 2 is, you should cut out work. 2 hours. You can't be working up right until bed or in bed or, sleep and the other S word for in bed, not, Netflix and work in bed and all these other things. Work somewhere else. Watch Netflix somewhere else. 1 is your blue light curfew. Cut out
Oh,
screens and blue
brilliant.
lights 1 hour. And 0, 10, 3, 2, 1, 0. 0 is the amount of times you should hit the snooze. Just get up when you say you're going to do. Create a habit. That's the most important thing in these books. They say it's the most important thing is to set your wake up time and then just backtrack with that. I'll let you finish after I'm done with my favorite sleep hacks externally. I use mouth tape, Gordy,
Hmm.
because you can look at people, our listeners can look up mouth tape online. There's 3, 4, 5 companies that sell mouth tape. You can just get the clear tape that you would put on your elbow if you donate blood or something on a piece of cotton ball. But mouth tape is genius. Dental hygienists recommend it. One of my favorite things to do, so you keep your mouth shut, so it really shuts down your chance of snoring. When you
Wow.
breathe only through your nose, it slows your heart rate down. You get the right amount of oxygen in, the right amount of CO2 out, and it creates nitric oxide, so it dilates your nostrils. You don't blow your nose with mucusy and yuck, and you don't have a
Love it.
sandpit in your mouth. Mouth tape is genius. And really get into that deep sleep you talked about faster and fall asleep faster and stay asleep because you're always going to breathe slow because you're breathing through your nose. And you're the
Wow.
exercise guru. People are wearing oxygen deprived masks in gyms. There's a
Hmm.
professional tennis player that trains with mouth tape on. So that's one of my favorite things. And then with the EMFs, we use a grounding sheet and a grounding pillowcase that's literally has a wire to the ground in our outlet so we can cancel out
Brilliant.
EMFs. I cut out we turn off our Wi-Fi also at night. I wear an eye mask. You can put a little lavender oil on that so you can smell throughout the night with my lavender oil. I like to meditate before night. If you want to look up something interesting on YouTube, look up the 5 or 10 best yoga stretches for sleep. There's really simple, easy, fun routines. And then I use something in Apollo Neuro that sends frequencies into my body to help me. They say the research says you sleep 20% better and deeper sleep when you use this Apollo Neuro as a hack. So those are some of my absolute favorite things to do to optimize my sleep and really take it serious so I can recharge and heal and repair and be the best I can waking up. And it's just exciting because I didn't
Oh,
sleep, Gordy, for the first 25 years of my life very well.
wow. Really?
Long story short, but you can change it. I mean, I
Wow.
literally had to share bedrooms and I just didn't sleep well. All right, Gordy, what are some of the things that you do to optimize your
All right.
internal, external
Oh,
environment?
perfect. I wanted to touch on a couple things that you had said, but I also want to touch on some stuff that we didn't talk about. And one of the things is maintaining your temperature in your bedroom, your room, your hotel room. And usually the ideal temperature, some of the sources say, are between 60 and 67 degrees. Seems a little cold, but you put on your blankets and stuff, you can be very cozy. But they say keep the room a little on the cool side. You talked about blackout curtains, and they're everywhere. You go to the hotels now, they have blackout curtains, eye masks. Those are just brilliant. Power lights from electronic devices. For example, my bedroom has a air filter. As you know, we spend so much time sleeping that I think it's really important to have fresh air during that times when you're sleeping. So I have an air filter in it, and there's power lights, and other people might have other electronics. I encourage you to shut them off. But if they're needed, those little small lights, you can put a black tape on them or duct tape just to keep it a little more darker in that room. I think it's something to be said about the circadian rhythm and keeping that cycle and keeping it dark. The other thing is noise. Something about me is I had these ear tubes put in. My parents didn't know what to do when I was a child. And when they took the tubes out, I had this chronic ear ringing. I didn't realize that until I went to college and understood, wow, I do hear a ring. And so I personally have a fan for years, a fan in the background. And some people have these white noise machines. And I had a buddy that came to visit us in Chicago, and he actually had an app, a white noise, and he would just put on whatever he wanted. There's different types of sounds that he put on at night, and that helped him sleep. We talked about mattresses and pillows, and brilliant. As far as like internal environment, things that you can do, bedtime rituals for relaxation, starting to slow your body down, getting it prepped, get the melatonin going, things like reading a book or practicing some light yoga or meditating, like you had said, Dr. Mike, taking a warm bath or listening to some quiet, calming music. And then limiting the screen an hour, 2 hours, or even more, just like you had mentioned, just shut it all down. The blue light, what's really cool about blue light is anything from computers to smartphones to even Kindles, anything that has a backlight has blue light. And they actually make, you can find it online or Amazon, where they have filters. So if you have your cell phone, for example, it's got a protective cover. You can get a blue filter for your cell phone, as well as your computer or even your Kindle or other electronic reading devices. A couple of things. You can look these up. Guided meditation, like you had said, Dr. Mike, progressive muscle relaxing. You can look that up. If you put in the YouTube guided meditation for sleep and relaxation, they'll give you phenomenal resources, what you can do. And also Dr. Wheel, he used to be a fitness guru that really brought the body, mind, and spirit. He has books. He's 81 years old now. He's still active. He's a medical doctor, a brilliant man, but he came out with a 4-7-8 breathing technique that he developed. And he refers to it as the natural tranquilizer for the nervous system. Dr. Herbert Benson said that it interrupts the stress response with a profound sense of rest. The other thing I want to just discuss briefly before I pass it on to you again, Dr. Mike, is things that you can do. Like we talked about the hormone called melatonin, which kind of starts to calm you down towards the evening. And then cortisone that gets you up in the morning. And that's part of the circadian rhythm, 24 cycle, your internal clock. Well, the hormones, melatonin. There is also a supplement called melatonin. And some people who travel across time zones or they have disruptive sleep, they've had success with the supplement called melatonin. Other foods that you can eat that will also help you with sleep is tryptophan, that's found in turkey, nuts, seeds, and can contribute to the production of serotonin and melatonin, these hormones that help you sleep. And you can also consume, like you had mentioned earlier, Dr. Mike, magnesium. High magnesium foods are leafy green vegetables, whole grains, fish, and that also can help you relax with the muscles and a sense of calm as well. Before you go to bed, sometimes if you eat too much, you had mentioned, you should not eat before, right as you go to bed. There's a certain period of time. I'm just reiterating that don't eat right before bed, because that can be a big problem as well, as far as getting a solid night's sleep. And staying adequately hydrated. You had mentioned that as well. Make sure that you're not drinking too many fluids before nighttime, and you had mentioned that as well. Some people have some real issues with their sleep, such as insomnia, sleep apnea, restless leg syndrome. And these are symptoms, and there is help out there. They do have sleep clinics. They do have cognitive behavior therapy for insomnia. That's a therapeutic intervention. So there is help for people that have real severe problems and is outside the scope of listening to our podcast. But a lot of people are in front of computers for long periods of time, at home, in front of laptops. They're at their mobile devices and smartphones. They're crunched over. They lose the normal posture. And they end up with achiness in the upper back and neck, with headaches and low back pain due to these postural strains, in addition to maybe they're not as active as they should be. So I think there's something to be said about finding a good chiropractor in your area and reducing this stress. And not only will that help with relaxing the muscles, but also helping you get a good night's sleep. One of the two things that I typically see is when I adjust someone, I say two things you'll probably notice, or actually three things. First of all, your pain levels are going to start to subside. You're going to start finding yourself a little more energy during the day. But more importantly, you're going to be able to sleep at night. That's one of the big side effects, which is a positive thing from addressing the spinal issues and making sure that your spine is taken care of so your body can relax, rest, and able to sleep for a full night's rest. I'm going to pass it on to you, but I'm just going to close by saying that trying to do everything all at once, probably not a great suggestion, but doing as many small things as you can, doing proactive steps. Maybe you just want to darken the room where you're sleeping, and maybe you want to leave all your electronic devices outside. Just the small things, accumulative, can make a huge difference. So I think sleep is vitally important to prevent a lot of problems, and it makes you have more energy to the day. You're more positive, you're more awake and alert, and sleep is such a foundation that I think it's underutilized, the techniques to get more sleep. So on to you, Mike. Dr. Mike,
Awesome. Really good stuff. Thank you for sharing that. And really, really, really good stuff. There's usually two camps with sleep. You either have a hard time falling asleep, or I fall asleep right away because I'm so exhausted, but then I wake up and then my mind gets going and I can't fall back asleep. But if you have a hard time falling asleep, really dive into a routine. Write down 3 or 4 or 5 simple things. Brush your teeth, take some melatonin, brush your teeth, do some yoga, do the 4-7-8, whatever you choose, and see if it makes sense. And just try a routine to see if you can train your body just to fall asleep faster. There's a really, really neat article. If you typed in military sleep method, you'll see a lot of magazines that have done stories on this. And there's a lot of action steps on how the military trains their people to fall asleep in little as 2 minutes, 5 minutes, or for sure in 10 minutes. Whether they're in basic training or they're on an airplane or a bus, or they have 4 hours before they have to get up for their next, training session or their next thing, they have to fall asleep fast. And they got the adrenaline going and the stress going and other things like that. Military sleep method that will help you fall asleep. But also, if you wake up in the middle of the night, do the 4-7-8 breathing like Dr. Gordy said, and then check out the military sleep method that can help you fall back asleep. And of course, they talk about the 4-7-8 breathing in the military sleep method. That's one of the many action steps that they do. One thing I didn't want to forget about is alcohol, Dr. Gordon.
Stimulants, yes.
Just because I personally don't drink right now, I'm not against drinking, but they say consistently over 2 drinks a day, you don't go into deep sleep. You might fall asleep, you might sleep and not wake up. But if you're consistently drinking over 2 drinks a day, that you just don't go into deep sleep. So you have to reassess that habit as well. I'm not saying you can't have a beer at night. I'm not saying can't celebrate. I'm just saying you got to track it. That's why if you track your sleep and your deep sleep with the device, or you're groggy in the morning and you're always having 2 or 3 drinks, that you got to evaluate that too. Melatonin is big in pistachios and cherries. And personally, I take magnesium at night, a product called Calm, but I also like CBD as just the quickest way to go through CBD is it creates homeostasis in our body. So everything else we take will benefit as well. But the no-brainers, if people want to take CBD, and this is a whole nother podcast, is it helps with pain, inflammation, anxiety, and sleep. There's other things too, but those are for sure well-researched. And then I kind of like chamomile tea. I like herbs a lot. I've been really diving into herbs because they're just concentrated food. There's sleepy time tea you can get with multiple herbs like chamomile and hops and lemon balm and passion flower and things like that. So that can be a very simple calming thing to do. It doesn't have caffeine, so it's not going to make you use the bathroom an hour before bedtime. Maybe have a glass of chamomile or sleepy time tea or things like that. So those were just a couple of things that I wanted to touch base on. The military sleep method, really, really, really cool articles online that you can access very easily. And so as we finish most podcasts, Dr. Gordy, I like to challenge our listeners and our audience to share one of the most important things that they learned or relearned or got introduced to during our podcast with a friend, coworker, or a family member. And then what's your one action step are you going to do? What's one thing? Are you going to look up yoga for sleep? Are you going to look into getting an eye mask? Are you going to maybe explore using lavender at night? If you have the lavender in your bathroom cabinet, maybe you use lavender at night. You're going to really dive into the dark room, like Dr. Gordy said, and just what's your one action step? And next time, we're going to dive into breaking your fast because we all fast overnight somewhat, unless you're eating peanut butter jelly sandwiches every 2 hours, or how are we going to break our fast in the morning? And when we do, whether it's 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, 8 in the morning, or we fast till noon and break our fast for lunch, we're going to talk about how to start your day properly with breakfast. And we're going to touch on fasting and how important that is for us. So with that, I am Dr. Mike Headlee and the Health Angle podcast. And
I'm Dr. Gordon Fimreite, and we'll see you all in the next episode.